All right, you guys, we are live, and today's show is a game changer. What I'm going to show you today was so important that I actually had to flip-flop the shows to bring you this first. What I'm about to reveal to you today is the underbelly of a conspiracy that may finally wake some people up. I'm going to show you the technology behind the use of weapons of mass destruction that were used to put you in fear and force you to go along with a dark agenda that I don't think any American signed up for. I'm also going to show you the infancy of the surveillance state, as well as how this technology may be currently being used to make us sick. What am I talking about? Well, here's the bombshell. Everything that I just explained to you is connected to both the Trump and Bush ancestors. The forefathers of Donald Trump and the Bushes literally worked together on these very technological advances in electrical wave technology and pharmaceuticals. Now, you're not going to believe me until I show it to you, so we'll get into that today. What this suggests is that there is a conspiracy. There's no way that both of those families became presidents under which there was pharmaceuticals and a likely weapon of mass destruction, which was, of course, the 9/11 event. Let's start from the beginning. All of you will remember the theories that I've held about Trump's uncle's involvement in the technology necessary to turn buildings into dust. And I'll explain to you why we had those theories, but it was evident that John Trump, who took Tesla's papers, Tesla was working on a death ray, and then John Trump was working on radar millimeter waves that we have now, that it's being the same technology is being used for 5G under Trump. And there were all these other connections. And just the utter disconnection of Donald Trump right after Blind 11. We're going to start calling it Blind 11. Not allowed to say it on this platform. You can, but they'll erase you. And just how detached he was after he knew that thousands of people had died, and he simply said in an interview, "Oh, I guess my buildings are now the tallest in Manhattan." Now, I also told you that John Trump was likely involved with the Brookhaven project, which I believe was the source of this weapon. Even the Brookhaven zip code encodes the opening year and the date of the destruction of the Twin Towers. Of course, the zip code was established long before Blind 11, but yet the zip code is 11973. The towers opened in 73, and of course they fell on Blind 11, which is 119 backwards. But we were missing the more definitive proof, weren't we? We were missing the players that were around during that time in the vintage era, the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. We had to show the conspiracy of it all. Well, that's what I'm going to show you today, that all of these people were working together. We're also going to get into some other very interesting things about the life work of John Trump, and what we're going to look at, I don't think anybody has looked at from this perspective. So this is brand new information, a brand new look, a fresh look at our American history and how all of this could have went down. Are you ready for this? This, of course, is John G. Trump. And if you didn't know, he is Trump's uncle, Donald Trump's uncle. And he was the one who was given Nikola Tesla's papers after he died. But there's so much more to this man than meets the eye. Because the life work, or part of the life work of John Trump, was swamps. What are you talking about, Casey? Have you completely lost your mind? Nope, here it is right here. John Trump was working on swamps. He was also working on the very power source that would power the world's first particle accelerators. Wow. And one of George Bush's ancestors worked with John Trump to develop what I believe was the unthinkable. Remember, George Bush Jr. was born on the very day and the year in the 1940s when the board of directors to build the World Trade Center was established. The day and year, you guys. And the 1940s was dead center in the middle of the electrical wars to develop death rays and radar and all kinds of wave technology. And John Trump was right there in the middle of it. Now, of course, this John Trump swamp thing is creepy on its face. I'm going to show that to you now. Let's see if we can figure this out. This is, I couldn't believe this. I don't know if I had seen this before or not, but let's take a look. Now, this is MIT's website, okay? And this is important because we're trying to figure out, what was going on. But essentially what he did was he worked on wastewater sludge. John also worked on sanitizing water, swamp water. Now this is interesting because, Donald Trump and his billionaire friends like to joke around about themselves being frogs. The Keck frog, Kekius maximus. Of course, frogs live in swamps. So this whole work that John Trump was doing to sanitize essentially swamp water is very curious to me. Now here's some of the work here. This MIT site has all of John Trump's work, but you can't get it unless you request it. And I don't want my name on some kind of list. I'm probably already showing up on their server. So essentially it's, it is what it is. But John Trump had over 80 papers, 80 publications. And what we do have here is a brief description and a title from some of this stuff. And in here are all the papers here. They talk about treating wastewater, treatment of water, wastewater, sludge, as you can see here, all of this, and it's a significant part of his work. Now, beyond that, I can't tell you what is going on. I can tell you that since this work that John Trump has done, they've determined now that pharmaceutical medications are being found in this wastewater. Okay, now I'm going to explain to you the pharmaceutical connection in a minute, because this is insane. But I'll put a link to this MIT website. Make sure you have your VPN on. You don't want these people knowing, what you're up to. But this was a part of his work. He worked with the EPA and all kinds of stuff. Now, what else is going on? Well, how did he sanitize the wastewater? Well, he used electrons to sterilize the water. Electrons. And everything we're going to discuss today deals with electrical waves. Okay, this was the core of this technology and what it actually did. All they did was modulate the amount of power and the frequency of the waves to get different effects. For instance, John Trump was also working on X-rays used for cancer. to determine, to x-ray for cancer tumors and things. He was also working on microwave technology as well as radar. So all these are just different forms of energy waves, aren't they? I know it's a bit more complex than that, but if you think about it this way, then it's a little bit easier to understand what they were working on. And these waves have all kinds of applications, from x-rays, which are relatively, not very damaging or harmful, all the way up to these super weapons and high voltage generators, which could create enough power to run a particle accelerator. Now, what else John was into is he got awards for his part in developing short-range radar during World War II. Now, to put yourself back in that time frame, apparently the world was really afraid of Hitler. And apparently he could just fly his bombers wherever he wanted and decimate entire cities. And there was really no defense. There was also the U-boats and submarines they had no defense against. So the race was on historically, and you can read all this in history. The race was on to develop some kind of radar to where they could find these threats before they arrived on the soil. This was going on in Britain and, of course, the United States, but Britain more specifically because they were under the direct threat. So, John Trump and all these electrical engineers were working on this stuff, including Van de Graaff, and we're going to get into Van de Graaff as well. He's linked to all this as well. But, you guys, radar waves are essentially millimeter waves, or can be when modulated to the millimeter setting. Millimeter waves is our current 5G technology, which of course Trump signed a law, 5G, 6G, and beyond during his first presidency. It was a game changer. 5G technology is different than 4G. It's a different technology. 5G is a millimeter wave. 4G was something else. Now let's keep going because there's more. I'm trying to get you to understand that this goes back. People say Trump's not in the club. Well, his ancestors developed the very technologies that are being used today. Of course he's in the club. The Bushes are too. And that should give you pause. Now we'll get to the Bush part in a bit, but John worked closely with another MIT grad, Robert Van de Graaff. And together, they developed the Van de Graaff machine. It's actually here in the Wikipedia article. This is history. What does the Van de Graaff machine do? It produces very high voltages. Voltages so high that they gave rise to the first particle accelerators of the world. Yes, the very first power sources necessary to run a particle accelerator was John Trump's Van de Graaff machine. I bet you didn't know that. Is it a mistake that now it's all about particle accelerators? Is this an accident? I don't believe it is. Now let's back up here. The world is getting much smaller, isn't it? The world is getting much smaller. Now, Brookhaven, the very lab that we speculated likely housed the weapon that took down the towers, it has 2 tandem Van de Graaff machines. This is the one in Greece, but there's also one at Brookhaven. Let's go back in here. This is insane. Early particle accelerators were often powered by a Van de Graaff generator, which used a rotating belt to build up a high voltage on a large spherical conductor. This is Brookhaven's National Laboratory. and they have 2 tandem Van de Graaff machines. This was likely the early power source when Brookhaven was established. And there's no doubt in my mind that John Trump helped build these before his death in the 1980s. This article actually even admits that Van de Graaff himself built these very generators at Brookhaven. Now, here's what they say here, and this is the link to John Trump and why I believe that he was part of this. It says in here, the TVDG, which is the tandem Van de Graaff, generators, was originally constructed by Robert J. Van de Graaff's High Voltage Engineering Corporation in the mid-1960s. Well, Van de Graaff and Trump actually started the HVEC company together. So, of course, John was working with Van de Graaff, but it's weird. This Brookhaven article does not mention John Trump, even though they mention the HVEC company and they mention Van de Graaff. Wow. It says here the TVG complex was originally constructed by Robert Van de Graaff High Voltage Engineering Corporation in the mid-1960s. So, of course, John helped him work on these at Brookhaven. In other words, they're trying to cover up any connections that John Trump has with Brookhaven, which is why I believe there was a weapon there that turned steel into dust. Now, let me keep laying out this argument here because this is very, very important. This is a big deal that they left John Trump out of this bio about the HVEC and these tandem Van de Graaff machines. And as we start to close in on the truth, we can put all the pieces together. We have the accelerator power source, the Van de Graaff machines. We have swamps. We have radar. We have hospital x-rays that John Trump was also working on to treat cancers. We have radiation therapies also used and developed and invented by John Trump. Notice how everything is about X-rays. And now we have everything X, don't we? Not only do we have everything X right now, Elon Musk, X Twitter, SpaceX, but we have Trump aligning with that. So it's almost like we're in a time loop. And all of this stuff is the stuff of science fiction. It's the stuff of super weapons. Now, the only thing we're missing is the actual weapon, right? But are we? Nikola Tesla is the missing link because he already developed a weapon that turned steel into dust. Didn't he? Nikola Tesla claimed to have invented a particle beam weapon called a death ray that could melt steel and obliterate military targets from hundreds of miles away. The death ray. And what was the basis of Tesla's death ray? Accelerated particles. The kind of particles accelerated by a Van de Graaff machine. Tesla proposed that a nation could destroy anything approaching within 200 miles and will provide a wall of power in order to make any country, large or small, impregnable against armies, airplanes, and other means of attack. This was Tesla's quote. Kind of sounds like Trump's Iron Dome, doesn't it? Now, here's the bombshell, and this is where things get really creepy, and this is how you're going to, in your mind, be able to tie all this together. Because there's always three, aren't there? There are always three. And in this case, there was another. John Trump, Van de Graaff, and one more. actually started the High Voltage Engineering Company, HVEC. Enter Dr. Robinson. He was the third in the group, and interestingly, he has no Wikipedia page. All we have is this MIT bio on Dennis Robinson. He's mentioned as one of the three that started the HVEC, but he doesn't have his own Wikipedia page. Now, what's up with Dr. Robinson? His full name is Dennis Morrell Robinson, and he was a Brit. And so I found this recorded interview. You can actually hear his voice in this interview. And then they've got it all, they've got it typed out here so you can read it. But in this taped interview, Robinson says that during World War II, the electrical engineers were hunting and searching and trying to develop a death ray to stop the bombers from breaking through their front lines. Literally a death ray. Let's read. Here he's referencing a different individual, and he says, "No, I can't provide a death ray for you." You remember that was the question, as he's talking to the interviewer, basically saying that was the question that they were all asked. Can you provide a death ray? Let's keep reading here. The committee, consisting of 4 prominent scientists, appealed to Watson Watt, who was then the head of the National Physics Laboratory radio section, whether he could suggest something like a death ray, because many death rays had been suggested to the government and all of them were found to be hopeless or phony. Watson Watt went apparently to his chief assistant Wilkins, and he knew very well there was no likelihood of a death ray that would produce the amount of energy in a distant plane to upset either the engine or the pilot. The idea was absolutely hopeless, but remember, Tesla was the one who claimed he could do it. Is this why they killed him? Did he say, or did he not allow them to use his patent? And then a few decades later, they stole the technology and then used it to bring down the towers. Is this what happened? I don't know the answer to that. But let's bring in the Bushes, because this really sealed the deal for me. I almost didn't do a show on this, but when I found out there was a Bush connection, I just about fell out of my chair. Because according to Robinson's bio, he worked under Vannevar Bush. Here it is right here. It says here, Robinson with John Trump and Robert Vandergraaf founded the High Voltage Engineering Company, which is what I just said. And he worked with, sorry for the size of this, you guys, but I'm trying to. Here's Vannevar Bush from 1929 to 1931. And of course, Vannevar Bush is part of the Bush family. So now we're starting to close in on some kind of conspiracy, aren't we? This is the family bloodline of the Bush family, and here you see Vannevar Bush is mentioned, engineer and inventor, who was the head of the Office of Scientific Research and Development. Now, Vannevar Bush is an interesting character. He was involved with the Manhattan Project. And it says, in some other things that we'll mention in a minute, it says here, he and George H.W. are descendants of Sarah Hamlin. So they're related, making them 7th cousins once removed. It is unclear if Vannevar is patrilineally related to the Bush political family, but they're related through this woman, Sarah Hamlin. Now, what else was Vannevar Bush a part of? And this is creepy. So he obviously worked at MIT. He trained Robinson, which was part of John Trump's team, HVEC, with Van de Graaff. But also, he actually developed Raytheon. This Vannevar Bush guy was everything, everywhere. Raytheon, as well as Merck Pharmaceuticals. You can't make this up. He started Raytheon, if I could find it on the page, and he also worked for Merck. Bush joined the Department of Electrical Engineering at Massachusetts Institute of Technology in 1919 and founded the company that became the Raytheon Company in 1922. The Manhattan Projects also mentioned here, as well as he was on the board of directors for Merck. And after the death of, let's see here, he remained director of Metals and Controls Corporation from 52 to 59 and of Merck and Company. Bush became chairman of the board at Merck following the death of George Merck. He was the chairman of the board. You guys, Merck is pharmaceuticals. Are you seeing how all this ties together? Why would a person who is experimenting with millimeter waves, microwaves, why would they be on the board of a pharmaceutical company? This makes absolutely no sense until you realize that they were modulating these frequencies and they were getting different effects. As we started the show with, they were getting effects to look inside your body with x-rays, relatively harmless, all the way up to very, very powerful devices, to power particle accelerators. And I believe somewhere in there, somewhere in that spectrum, they might have found a frequency that actually causes people to be sick. And why make people sick if you can't profit off of it? Now, I don't know this. This is just a theory. But this is the dead giveaway. This is the dead giveaway. And we know that these people were working together, and they were toying around with death rays. They were all trying to develop it. And I believe what they're not telling us is that they were actually able to develop it. So we have frequencies. We have dustified buildings. We have pharmaceuticals. We have Trump's smack the nations, vaccinations. It sounds like we're starting to close in on the truth. Now, what else this technology can do is it can surveil us, which we are on the cusp of right now. It can take down buildings, and each of the Bushes and Trump's descendants played their exact role to wield this technology against the American people during their presidencies. You guys, these aren't just random technologies. These are specific technologies that are being used right now, that were controlled and developed by a small group of men that then just so happened their ancestors became presidents. Now, to try to simplify the gravity of what I just shared with you, because I know it's a lot of information, but to simplify the gravity of the situation, imagine that you woke up one day and you found out that all the truth channels went to the same college, same high school, and We're all hanging out together as kids. It would change the very landscape of how you feel about the truth community, wouldn't it? You'd be like, that's impossible. The odds of that is impossible. This must be a conspiracy. Correct? So why do these people get off the hook for this? Literally, 5G technology is based off of John Trump's work, you guys. Merck is now developing, or has developed, an mRNA technology to smaccinate chickens. It's called Innovax. We just covered that the other day. Now, let me repeat this because this is important. Electrical wave technology is simply modulated radiation used for various purposes on a spectrum, and it's based on the level and the frequency of that radiation. But it's all the same technology. X-rays are the same as millimeter waves, are the same as radar waves, is the same as 5G, is the same as radio waves, and sanitizing electrons for swamp water is the same as high voltage Van de Graaff machines, and on and on and on. It's the frequency and the power of the waves that determine its application and purpose. And I believe that they found a frequency and a power level that literally disintegrates steel, the death ray. And Trump knows it, and the Bushes know it. Because the odds of these two prominent presidents being right there in New York, in the middle of the very technologies that their ancestors worked on, and having that play out in their presidencies has to be 1 in a trillion. These are the core technologies being used today. The entire Stargate AI program would not be possible without this technology. So, this almost seems to prove a link between pharmaceuticals and electrical waves, doesn't it? In my mind, it does. These presidents were selected, and at this point, I'm starting to believe that they are advanced lieutenants for the devil himself, tasked to carry out world events to shape the very history of our existence. The prominent politicians in the last 3 decades had ancestors that all worked together on technologies that are now at the core of our current reality. Merck Pharmaceuticals, particle accelerators, 5G microwaves, and likely a secret weapon of mass destruction. Now, tomorrow, I think we're going to finally get to the TV series Paradise. I've been putting that off just because other more important information has come up. Of course, this was a very important show today. But the TV show Paradise, I already have it decoded, and it's about elite billionaires who build an underground community to survive the end of the world. It's complete with a firmament. It's complete with an artificial sun and all kinds of other crazy stuff. So I'll present that to you tomorrow. And then day after tomorrow, you're not even going to believe this, Gene Hackman's name appears in the Craven Hunter movie on a helicopter 66 days before he died. So I'm going to tell you what that's all about, because it's all about hacking the genes. It's all about chimerism. They already knew he was going to die 66 days before he died, because that's when the film released. And you see literally GNHCK on the helicopter. How can this be? Do these people have like some kind of a looking glass technology? I don't know. But anyway, today's show is very, very, very important. Everything I said is verified in the links that I'm going to put in the pinned comment. The whole HVEC club, high voltage engineering company, all of that. The 3, we're going to have to come up with a nickname for the 3. John, Trump, Van de Graaff, and Robinson. we could call them TVR, but this is the big secret, you guys. This is the big secret. Everything that we're experiencing right now, particle accelerators, 5G millimeter waves, and pharmaceuticals, was developed by our very president's ancestors. That's not an accident. It's not an accident. So thanks for those of you that tuned in today. I will put a link to all this in the pinned comment. Give me like 20 minutes. It usually takes me to do that. And thanks for the super chats. Much love for that. And thank you guys for, being here. It means a lot. Helps me get up and do this every day. Now, how did I find this? Well, I have to give credit to the Holy Spirit. Always. Something told me to keep looking at John Trump. Something told me there have to be more clues. And that's when I found the Bush connection. So, God wants you to know this. Now, the Bible promises us that no weapon shall prosper. But guess what? Only the truth can set you free. The Bible also says that. And if you're blinded and don't want to know the truth or are in denial about the truth, then the promise of no weapons prospering might not apply to you, will it? And there are a lot of people that are still fast asleep. I was in the Facebook today, and it's funny how the tides have changed. Let's talk a little bit about Zelensky. This is important. This whole skit that they did in the White House with Trump and Vance pretending to gang up on Zelensky was a skit. It was exactly that, a skit. In fact, they did a Saturday Night Live skit, which it's actually really funny because it just shows how ridiculous this whole thing is. But what you have now are people jumping back on Zelensky's side. This is insane. It's literally insanity. You guys, war is sacrifice. The world is ruled by Satan, and so therefore every political leader has to offer their sacrifice to Satan. The easiest way for them to do that is through war. And I don't know what that number is, but it's in the millions of people that they have to sacrifice. Well, Casey, Trump didn't sacrifice anyone. Look around you. Look around you. We do the poll from time to time. I'm probably going to stop doing it because we'll get kicked off of YouTube if we keep doing it. But essentially, we do a poll, and I ask you if you know someone who got who was healthy, who died within a year of getting it. And literally between 60 and 80% of you answered yes. We've done this poll even on shows with almost 1,000 people watching. And still, 60 to 80% of you know somebody. When you extrapolate those numbers out, we're talking millions of people. And it happened in plain sight. It literally happened in plain sight. And literally, pretty much only the people on this channel and a few other people actually understand the gravity of what I just said to you. And the reason why I say that only a few people understand the gravity is because here we have truth channels that are still pushing Trump. So the devil got his sacrifice. He got his sacrifice, didn't he? And never forget, just like on Blind 11, we never forget what happened 19 years after Blind 11, when we were told that 19 hijackers flew 2 shots and a booster into America. I love each and every one of you, and I will see you tomorrow. Take care and be safe, you guys.